Faculty bullies at Roosevelt High School made one fatal mistake when they targeted the wrong teacher. Maya Chen, a 22-year-old math instructor, endured months of harassment from 3 veteran staff members who shoved her into lockers and sabotaged her classroom. What these bullies didn't know was that their quiet, bookish victim was a third-degree black belt who had abandoned competitive karate after a devastating accident. Maya had sworn never to fight again, but when the corrupt faculty members began targeting her students and stealing their scholarship money, she faced an impossible choice between maintaining her peaceful oath and protecting the kids who desperately needed her. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who refuses to fight until they have no other choice. Maya Chen stood in the school hallway breathing hard. 3 faculty members lay groaning on the linoleum. Coach Bradley clutched his shoulder against the water fountain. Vice Principal Torres slumped against the wall, holding his ribs. Ms. Patterson sat dazed by the lockers, her reading glasses askew. Students peered from doorways like prairie dogs after thunder. Phone cameras captured everything through cracked doors. A sophomore whispered to her friend, "Did Ms. Chen just take down 3 teachers?" Maya noticed the phones. Her warrior stance crumbled. The math teacher returned, horrified at what she'd become. She ran down the hallway, her sensible flats echoing. Against the walls, the title card appeared like a judgment, 72 hours earlier. Maya sat across from Principal Washington in his cramped office. Student artwork covered every surface. A motivational poster about dreams hung crooked behind his desk. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead like a dying insect. Washington shuffled, papers without looking at her. "Your test scores are exceptional, Maya, but some staff feel you're difficult to work with." Through the glass partition, 3 figures watched. Coach Bradley crossed his thick arms. Vice Principal Torres adjusted his tie. Ms. Patterson tapped her pen against her clipboard. They smiled when Maya noticed them. The principal cleared his throat. "Maybe try being more collaborative." Maya's hands rested flat on her knees. She nodded once. Her apartment was a study in careful control. Books lined every wall in perfect rows. Her meditation corner held a single cushion facing the window. The late afternoon sun painted everything gold. She opened her closet door. Behind her teaching clothes, trophies gathered dust on the top shelf. Tournament medals hung forgotten on their ribbons. A photograph lay face down beside them. Maya lifted the picture. A younger version of herself stood beside an elderly Asian man. Both wore tournament uniforms. Both held trophies. Both looked fierce and proud. She flipped it, face down again. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a single word, Sensei. "Maya-chan, how is the teaching?" Maya touched the glass of her window. "It's exactly what I needed, Sensei, peaceful." "Good. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice." The line went quiet. Maya watched children play in the courtyard below. "I know, Sensei." The harassment began like water, wearing stone. Small things, persistent things. Maya's lesson plans disappeared from her desk overnight. She found them in the dumpster behind the cafeteria, coffee stains blooming across her careful handwriting. She rewrote them without complaint. Her laptop screen showed a blue death screen during parent conferences. Coffee had somehow spilled directly into the keyboard. The sticky note beside it read, "Oops, maintenance." Faculty meetings became theaters of small cruelties. Maya would arrive to find her chair removed. She stood in the back while others sat. When she spoke, conversations would start at the opposite end of the table. Torres examined his fingernails while Maya presented her students' improvement statistics. "Maybe some people aren't cut out for this environment." Bradley nodded. "Takes a special kind of person to handle these kids." Patterson clicked her pen. "Some people have unrealistic expectations." Maya's hands formed fists beneath the conference table. Her knuckles went white. She breathed through her nose and loosened her fingers. After the meeting, she walked to her car. All 4 tires sat flat against the asphalt. The real wound came through her students. Jamal Washington sat in the front row of her advanced algebra class with a black eye that hadn't been there yesterday. Purple bruises ringed his brown skin like storm clouds. Maya handed back his quiz. Perfect score. Again. Jamal, can you stay after class? The other students filed out. Maya waited until the hallway noise faded. What happened to your face? Jamal stared at his desk. Nothing, Ms. Chen. Just nothing. This doesn't look like nothing. Please don't ask. It'll only make things worse. Maya knelt beside his desk. For who? Jamal's eyes filled with tears he refused to shed. For both of us. That afternoon, Maya graded papers in her empty classroom. Through the thin walls, she heard Coach Bradley's voice in the hallway. You need to learn your place, boy. Stop showing off in that math class. But I'm getting A's. My mom says, that's the problem. You're making other kids look bad. Maybe you should find an easier class. Maya set down her pen. She walked to her door and opened it slightly. Through the crack, she saw Bradley towering over Jamal. The boy's shoulders shook. I like math, Coach Bradley. Ms. Chen says I could get a scholarship. Ms. Chen says a lot of things, doesn't mean they're true. Maya's grip tightened on the door handle. Her breathing changed. Deeper, controlled, the way she'd been taught to breathe before a fight. She closed the door and returned to her desk. But the papers blurred together. The numbers made no sense. That evening, she called her sensei. I think I need to quit teaching. Silence stretched across the phone line like a held breath. Why, Maya-chan? I can't become that person again, I won't. What person? Maya stared at the overturned photograph. The one who hurts people, and if your silence hurts your students? The question hung in the air like smoke. Maya had no answer. Sometimes, Maya-chan, the greatest violence is doing nothing. The line went dead. Maya sat in her meditation corner as darkness claimed her apartment. Outside, the city breathed and moved and lived. Inside, she counted her breaths and tried to forget the sound of Jamal's voice breaking. But some sounds, once heard, never fade. They settle into the bones like winter cold. They wait for spring to melt them into action. The harassment came, like winter rain, steady, relentless. Each drop insignificant alone, but together they carved canyons. Maya's car windows were soaked with crude messages. Her classroom door was mysteriously locked each morning until maintenance arrived with knowing smirks. Anonymous complaints appeared in her personnel file like tumbleweeds gathering against a fence. She endured it all with the patience of stone. But stones, worn long enough, eventually crack. The memory surfaced unbidden during her lunch break. Maya was 17. The tournament mat stretched before her like fresh snow waiting for blood. Her opponent was smaller, younger, 15 at most. The girl's mother had driven 3 hours to watch. She sat in the front row clutching a homemade sign with her daughter's name written in glitter. Maya circled her opponent like a wolf studying prey. The girl's stance was textbook perfect, but her eyes betrayed her fear. This was her first regional tournament. Maya had won 7. The match began. Maya moved with calculated brutality. Each technique was legal but merciless. She could have ended it quickly with control and grace. Instead, she chose to dominate. The final throw came when the girl was already broken. Maya lifted her opponent high and drove her down onto the mat with unnecessary force. The sound was like a branch snapping in winter wind. The girl didn't get up. The crowd fell silent. Even the referee hesitated before calling the match. Maya stood over her fallen opponent, chest heaving with pride and adrenaline. Then she saw the girl's eyes. Blank. Staring at nothing. The ambulance arrived 12 minutes later. By then, Maya's sensei had found her vomiting behind the gymnasium. His weathered face showed no anger, only disappointment deeper than any punishment. Maya-chan, what have you done? They visited the hospital the next day. The girl lay connected to machines that breathed for her and counted her heartbeats. Her mother sat beside the bed, aging a year with each passing hour. The girl would recover. Eventually, but she would never compete again, never trust her body the same way. Never look at a tournament mat without remembering the moment when winning became more important than honor. Maya's sensei spoke quietly beside the hospital bed. Strength without control is not strength. It is destruction. Maya quit fighting that day. She gave away her trophies, burned her uniforms, buried her rage beneath books and equations and the quiet satisfaction of teaching minds instead of breaking bodies. The memory faded as Maya returned to her empty classroom. She stared at her hands. They looked like teachers' hands now, soft from chalk dust instead of calloused from training. But muscle memory lived deeper than skin. The physical confrontation came on a Thursday after the custodial staff had gone home. Maya stayed late grading quizzes in the amber light of her desk lamp. The building settled around her like an old house preparing for sleep. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. 3 sets, measured, deliberate. Coach Bradley filled her doorway first. His shoulders blocked most of the light from the corridor. Torres appeared beside him, straightening his tie like a man preparing for business. Patterson brought up the rear, her clipboard held like a shield. "Working late again, Chen." Maya didn't look up from her papers. Students deserve feedback on their work. That's the problem. Bradley stepped into her classroom. The other 2 followed. "You're making the rest of us look bad." Maya set down her pen. She kept her hands flat on the desk. "I'm just doing my job." "Your job is to fit in, not stand out." Torres closed the classroom door. The click echoed like a rifle bolt. Time for a reality check. They moved together like wolves who had hunted before. Bradley grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her from her chair. She could have resisted, could have twisted free and put him on the ground in 3 seconds. Instead, she went limp. They shoved her against the lockers outside her classroom. The metal sang against her spine. Maya's body shifted instinctively into a fighting stance. Her weight distributed, her center dropped. Her hands rose to protect her core. Then she caught herself, forced her muscles to relax, let herself become prey. "Look at that. She's not so tough after all." Patterson laughed. The sound was sharp as breaking glass. "Maybe now you'll understand how things work around here." They left her on the cold linoleum. Maya tasted blood from her split lip. Her shoulder throbbed where it had struck the locker handle, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the weight of her choice. She had let them win, let them hurt her, because the alternative was becoming the person she'd sworn never to be again. Maya pulled herself to her feet and returned to her classroom. Jamal's quiz lay on top of the stack she'd been grading. Perfect score. Written in his careful handwriting was a note. "Thanks for believing in me, Ms. Chen. You're the first teacher who ever did." The tears came then, not from pain or fear or anger, from the terrible understanding that protecting these children meant more than protecting herself. Maya wiped her eyes and continued grading, but her hands shook as she wrote encouraging comments in red ink. Outside her windows, the city lights blurred like stars seen through tears. The next morning brought new mysteries. The school's financial records didn't balance. Maya discovered the discrepancies while researching scholarship opportunities for her advanced students. The college prep fund showed $0 available, but the district had allocated $50,000 just last semester. The tutoring program budget was empty. The academic achievement awards had vanished from the books entirely. Maya traced the paper trail like a detective following footprints in snow. Every missing dollar led back to the same 3 signatures: Bradley, Torres, Patterson. They weren't just bullying her. They were stealing from her students, from kids like Jamal who needed every advantage to escape the gravity of poverty and low expectations. Maya printed the evidence and locked it in her desk drawer. But as she prepared to leave, footsteps approached her classroom. Familiar footsteps, measured and deliberate. Torres appeared in her doorway. His smile was sharp as winter wind. "Working late again, Chen? You really should be more careful. These old buildings can be dangerous after hours." His eyes found her computer screen, found the financial records still glowing there, found the truth she'd uncovered. Curiosity killed the cat, you know. Maya closed her laptop slowly. Torres watched every movement. Of course, satisfaction brought it back, but that's just a saying. Cats only get one life in the real world. He left without another word. Maya sat in the growing darkness, understanding that the game had changed. This wasn't about fitting in anymore. It was about survival. And somewhere in the city, her students were going home to families who dreamed of college scholarships that had already been stolen. Dreams built on money that lined the pockets of the people paid to nurture those very dreams. Maya locked her evidence away and walked to her car. The parking lot was empty, except for her small sedan and the lengthening shadows of evening. She drove home through streets that suddenly felt less safe, carrying secrets that burned like coals in her chest. Maya arrived at school early the next morning, but Torres was already waiting by her classroom door. He leaned against the wall like a predator claiming territory. His smile never reached his eyes. "Sleep well, Chen?" Maya unlocked her door without responding. Her hand stayed steady despite the hammering in her chest. Torres followed her inside and closed the door behind him. Funny thing about evidence. Sometimes it just disappears. He walked to her desk and pulled out the drawer where she'd locked the financial documents. Empty. The papers were gone as if they'd never existed. Maintenance has access to everything, you know, for safety reasons. Maya faced him across her empty classroom. The morning light through her windows seemed dimmer now, filtered through the dust of defeat. "I made copies." "Did you?" "That would be unfortunate. Computer systems crash all the time. Files get corrupted. Hard drives fail." Torres adjusted his tie and moved toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. Accidents happen to people who don't learn from friendly warnings. The door closed with a soft click. Maya stood alone among her bulletin boards and motivational posters, understanding that she'd lost before the real fight had even begun. But she'd underestimated how deep the rot ran. Principal Washington summoned her during lunch period. His office felt smaller than before, the walls pressing in like a trap closing. "Maya, I hear you've been asking questions about school finances." She sat across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap like a student called before the principal, which she realized was exactly what she was. "The scholarship fund shows zero balance. Students are asking about college prep money." Washington leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, like a man who'd made too many compromises and lost track of which ones mattered. "You're a good teacher, Maya, but you're naive about how things work in schools like this." "How do they work?" "We serve a certain population. These kids come from difficult backgrounds. Most of them aren't college material, no matter what standardized tests might suggest." Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "My students are brilliant. Your students are products of their environment. We do them no favors by giving them unrealistic expectations." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had been burning for decades. Washington opened her personnel file and spread it across his desk like evidence at a trial. "You have excellent test scores. Your students show remarkable improvement, but there have been complaints about your attitude, your unwillingness to be a team player." Maya stared at the papers documenting her supposed failures. Anonymous complaints, vague accusations, death by 1,000 small cuts. "We're being realistic about these kids' futures. College isn't for everyone." "Whose decision is that?" Washington closed the file. "The decision of people who understand the system better than you do." Maya walked back to her classroom through hallways that suddenly felt hostile. Students passed her without making eye contact. Word traveled fast in schools. Everyone knew she was marked. The real cruelty began that afternoon. Maya watched from her window as Bradley cornered 3 of her honor students by the flagpole. Their body language told the story. Shoulders hunched, eyes down, dreams being systematically crushed. Keisha Williams had perfect attendance and a 4.0 GPA. She wanted to study engineering. Bradley was explaining why technical school might be more realistic. Marcus Thompson solved calculus problems for fun. He dreamed of MIT. Torres was helping him understand the importance of managing expectations. Sarah Chen shared Maya's last name but no relation. She wrote poetry that made Maya weep. Patterson was discussing the practical benefits of community college. One by one, Maya's best students began missing her advanced classes. They transferred to easier sections. Their parents received calls about being more realistic about their children's abilities. Maya tried to fight back with phone calls home, but the damage was already done. Fear was a more powerful teacher than hope. That evening, her sensei arrived, unannounced at her apartment. He sat in her meditation corner like he belonged there, his weathered hands folded in his lap. "You look like someone who has lost a battle." Maya poured tea with shaking hands. "I lost before it started. Because you chose the wrong battlefield. I chose not to fight at all." Her sensei accepted the tea but didn't drink. "You are fighting, Maya-chan. You fight every day you walk into that school. Every day you believe in those children when no one else will. It's not enough. Perhaps. But the question is not whether it is enough. The question is whether it is right." They sat in silence as darkness claimed the city outside. Maya watched the lights come on in windows across the street. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that children's futures were being stolen by the people paid to protect them. "I swore I would never hurt anyone again." "And if your gentleness allows others to be hurt?" Maya had no answer. Her sensei rose to leave but paused at the door. "There is a difference between the warrior who fights for pride and the warrior who fights for love. You have learned the first lesson. Perhaps it is time for the second." The next afternoon brought the moment Maya had been dreading. She stayed late to prepare tomorrow's lessons, losing herself in the familiar ritual of planning and hoping. Outside her classroom windows, the school emptied like water draining from a broken vessel. Voices echoed from the hallway. Harsh voices. Familiar voices. Maya opened her door and saw them at Jamal's locker. All three of them. Bradley, Torres, and Patterson. They surrounded him like wolves circling a wounded deer. Jamal's college applications were scattered across the floor, essays he'd spent weeks perfecting. Recommendation letters Maya had written with care and pride. Dreams made manifest in paper and ink now trampled underfoot. Just get some answers wrong on her tests, make her look bad. Jamal's voice was small but defiant. "I earned those A's." "That's the problem, son. You're making other kids feel stupid." Bradley stepped closer. "Maybe you need to learn about being part of a team." He shoved Jamal hard. The boy stumbled backward and fell, his remaining papers scattering like autumn leaves in a cruel wind. His college essay about overcoming adversity landed in a puddle from the broken water fountain. "Oops, looks like college boy had an accident." Maya watched her student's face crumble, watched 16 years of dreams dissolve in dirty water, watched the moment when hope died in a child's eyes. Something inside her shifted, like tectonic plates grinding against each other before an earthquake. The gentle teacher who had endured months of abuse felt the warrior stirring beneath her skin. Maya stepped into the hallway. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had finally reached the end of compromise. "Step away from him." The three turned to face her. Torres smiled his predator's smile. "Or what, Chen?" Patterson laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "You going to file another complaint?" Bradley cracked his knuckles like a man preparing for work. "Let's teach them both a lesson about knowing their place." Maya looked down at Jamal. And his tears. At his scattered dreams. At the future they were stealing from him one cruel word at a time. She felt her stance change. Felt her center drop. Felt decades of training flow back into muscles that remembered every lesson her sensei had ever taught. "Close your eyes, Jamal." Bradley reached for her with hands that had hurt too many children and crushed too many dreams. Maya didn't step back. Bradley lunged forward with the confidence of a man who had never faced real resistance. Maya moved like water flowing around stone. She redirected his momentum, using his own weight against him. He crashed into the lockers, with a sound like thunder. Torres came next, grabbing for her arm. Maya's response was surgical. a pressure point technique that sent him to his knees, then gently guided him to the floor. No broken bones, no permanent damage, just the sudden understanding that he had misjudged everything. Patterson backed away, clipboard raised like a shield. Maya didn't pursue her. The woman's fear was punishment enough. The hallway filled with students drawn by the commotion. Phone cameras emerged like flowers after rain. They recorded everything. The math teacher who had become something else entirely. The bullies who lay groaning on the linoleum like beached whales. Maya looked down at her hands. They were steady now. Sure, but the horror of what she'd revealed about herself crashed over her like a cold wave. Jamal stared at her with wide eyes. "Ms. Chen, you saved me." "I'm sorry you had to see that." Maya ran, down the hallway, past the gathering crowd, past the phones and the whispers and the sudden understanding that her quiet life was over. Her apartment felt like a tomb when she returned. Maya pulled out her suitcases and began folding her clothes with mechanical precision. The hidden trophies sat on her closet shelf, no longer shameful secrets but reminders of who she really was. Her phone buzzed constantly, notifications piling up like snow in a blizzard. She ignored them all until one made her pause. The video wasn't what she expected. It wasn't footage of the fight. It was Jamal speaking directly into a phone camera with the intensity of someone much older than 16. "Ms. Chen taught us that equations have to balance. These teachers were stealing our scholarship money. They were crushing our dreams. She balanced the equation." His voice never wavered. His eyes never left the camera. "She didn't fight because she was angry. She fought because she loves us enough to protect us when no one else would." Maya set down her phone with trembling hands. Outside her window, car doors slammed. Footsteps on the stairs. A knock at her door so soft it might have been the wind. Her sensei stood in the hallway, weathered and patient as mountains. He entered without invitation and settled into her meditation corner like he'd been waiting there for years. "You believe you have failed." Maya continued packing. "I became violent again." "No. Before you fought for ego. Today you fought for justice. Can you see the difference?" Maya's hands stilled on her folded sweaters. "I don't know if I can face them again. The students, the cameras, what they think of me now." Her sensei gestured toward the window. "Look outside." Maya pulled back the curtain. The street below was filled with people. Students, parents, even some teachers she didn't recognize. They held signs written in careful handwriting. "We need Ms. Chen. Don't let them win. Teach us to balance the equation." Tears came then, not of shame or regret, but of understanding. These children didn't see a violent teacher who had lost control. They saw someone who had finally found the courage to stand up when standing up mattered most. Maya returned to Roosevelt High 3 days later. The corrupt faculty were gone, arrested in a dawn raid that made the morning news. Principal Washington had resigned in disgrace. A new principal, a black woman with kind eyes and steel in her spine, walked the hallways like someone who belonged there. Maya's classroom looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. Her students sat straighter, spoke louder, looked her in the eye with something that hadn't been there before. Respect. She wrote an equation on the whiteboard. Simple algebra, variables and constants in the eternal search for balance. Today we're learning about variables. Sometimes the same person can have completely different values depending on what equation they're part of. She turned back to face her class. 28 faces watched her with attention that felt sacred. "Ms. Chen?" Jamal's voice carried new confidence. "Yes? Can you teach us more than just math?" Maya's hand paused on the whiteboard marker. These children needed more than equations. They needed to know they could protect themselves. Protect each other. Stand up to the forces that would diminish them. "Class, let's talk about balance." 6 months later, Maya received a letter addressed to Sensei Chen. Inside, a child's drawing showed her teaching a room full of students. Stick figures with enormous smiles and the words written in crayon, Thank you for showing us we don't have to choose between being smart and being strong. Maya pinned it beside her trophies, no longer hidden in the closet but displayed on her bookshelf like prayers answered. The after-school program had grown beyond her wildest dreams. Students learned self-defense alongside calculus. They studied physics while practicing balance. They discovered that strength and intelligence weren't opposites but partners in the dance of becoming who they were meant to be. Maya's reflection in her apartment window showed a woman transformed. Not the frightened teacher who had hidden from her own power, nor the reckless fighter who had once valued winning above honor. Something new. Something balanced. Her college acceptance rate spoke for itself. 97% of her students went on to higher education. The restored scholarship fund, recovered from the corrupt officials' accounts, made dreams possible that had seemed impossible just months before. But the real victory lived in smaller moments. In the way Jamal carried himself now. In the questions her students asked without fear. In the understanding that education wasn't about knowing your place but about creating your own. Maya tied her black belt around her waist and walked to the school gymnasium where her students waited. They formed perfect lines, backs straight, eyes forward, ready to learn that the greatest strength came not from the ability to fight but from the wisdom to know when fighting was the only option left. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, painting everything gold. Maya looked at these children who had taught her as much as she had taught them, and understood finally what her sensei had always known. Some equations took a lifetime to balance, and that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.